Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street, presented by Plaza Hotel and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Here is Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel, Gary Vickery, and I'm your host, Lisa Melmed.
Welcome. So today we are very special. It's just Oscar and I, which is dangerous because if this goes well, maybe this podcast will just become you and I, and Lisa and Gary will be off.
Well, I think that's a good idea, and maybe we can make money with it too. Who knows?
Hey, I'm in the room here too.
Well, you're just listening.
Yeah,
yes, thank you, Rich.
You're a paid employee at this point.
That's true.
We are here doing another recap of Oscar's dinner series. It was a wonderful evening last week, and Oscar shared some stories that, frankly, I had never heard, or at least never listened to properly. I've heard every single one of the 40 dinner series we've done.
Is that right? Well, it's like one of my sons. I said, Eric, did you read my book, Being Oscar? He said, Dad, I lived it.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. You're living it.
We talked about Oscar's sort of beginning in Las Vegas and how he got to move here and the history of how he became a lawyer. And I actually really liked it because I think people think there's this sort of, in life, you have this master plan of how you're going to end up in a certain position. And like many things, you certainly did not have a master plan. It was fortuitous. And you rolled with the punches. You never said no to anything.
Correct.
You took on anything.
Correct.
And it landed you in a very good place, which I think is amazing advice for people looking.
It's the best
starting
place.
out.
It's the best place. You can't fight it. I mean, if you fight what destiny is, you're going to lose that battle. And I'm a great believer in, it's a Yiddish word, beshert.
Yeah.
Beshert means it's destined. And basically it's meant to be. And everything that happens is meant to be. And that's where I find myself today. I'm so happy being associated with Oscars down at the Plaza and being...
people, you say that in all these episodes, people are going to think that we pay you to say that. I mean, it's...
Well, no one pays me to say anything. I mean, I've been paid my whole life to talk, but nobody tells me what to say.
Not to say we have a good burger.
I'm not gonna tell you that it isn't the best burger in the world because it's a great burger. It's that good. As I said the other day, I said you could have it at dinner, you have it for breakfast the next day, you have it for lunch. Dinner, I mean, all weekend long, you could be eating the same burger, and it tastes as good as the day that Chef Ben brought it out.
I brought my nephew here a couple of weeks ago, and we split the burger for happy hour. And everything you claim, everything Jonathan claims, everything
it's true.
Ben claims,
it's all
absolutely true.
See, and it's enhanced when you have your Bombay Sapphire Martini with the jalapeno in it. Then it's a giant score.
I went actually just as an aside. I tried the new steakhouse downtown called Saltgrass. It's not like as a high-end steakhouse. I don't think it's meant to be, but it's very nice and another complimentary addition to downtown's dining scene. It's at the Golden Nugget.
Okay.
Very nice. But going back to the dinner series, so we had a great time. We had a great crowd, sold out event. A lot of great downtown investors and developers. You talked with Steve Siegel.
Yes.
We had Jonathan Kermani. A lot of good guys that came to their first one.
Right, and I think they'll be back.
They'll be back, and that's what's cool about it. Once you come to one of these, you come back.
And you can make a score every once in a while. Like I said to Siegel, he was sitting at our table with his beautiful wife, and I'm talking to him that I can't get a good Bialy in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And he says, what do you mean? I said, I don't know who sells Bialys. He says, we do at Bagel Mania. Next day, of course, fellas knocking on my door with 6 Bialys and cream cheese.
How were they?
I didn't have enough for you. You know how good they are.
I know. That's why I asked you, because normally you call me when you got something good.
There's a difference between the New York Bialys that I gave to you and the ones that Steve gave to me, and that is the onion, which is in the middle of the Bialy. In New York, it's sort of like a jam or a paste, whereas Steve's, it crumbles off. By the time you get it out of the toaster, you have to turn the toaster upside down in order to get the little onions on top of the naked Bialy there. But it is real good.
Okay, well, I'll have to try them. I know where Bagel Mania is, and they're opening the new one by the new convention center.
Isn't that exciting?
It's going to be very cool.
It could be the hottest ticket in town. I have people from L.A. and Beverly Hills who want to come up to the opening, so I'm going to have to talk to Steve about that.
And I heard they got really good smoked salmon, which is important to me.
It's very, very important, although I'm a great smoked whitefish guy. I love smoked whitefish.
Me too.
And the only place you could really get it in town that I know of other than a deli is over at Costco. And it's a Costco up in Summerlin.
Yeah.
And then, it's like a whale. You take it home. That's another thing you eat for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner. I mean, it doesn't stop, this food.
So let's hear a little bit about how Oscar ended up in Las Vegas, because I think, like I said, people think there's sometimes these grandmaster plans, and there certainly was not one in this case.
Carolyn and myself got married in Philadelphia. I had been a student at the University of Pennsylvania Law School. I hated law school for a lot of reasons. I was the dumbest guy in my class, and I never really liked it. It was in the 1960s, which was the Warren Court, and that was a court which was very progressive, that really cared about Fourth Amendment rights, Fifth Amendment rights, Sixth Amendment rights, Eighth Amendment rights. And I was a student of those rights, and my fellow classmates, who were all very bright guys, they all wanted to go on to big firms. They wanted white shoe firms, they used to call them, with the big law firms that did civil work, which did corporate work. And I had no interest in doing that. And I had just gotten married to dear Carolyn after my first year. And I said to myself, I'm going nuts here. I don't like the law school. I don't like my classes. I don't like what I'm learning. I don't like anything about this. If I'm not going to be a lawyer, what am I going to be, a rabbi? And she said, you make the worst rabbi in the history of the world. You wouldn't have one member of your congregation stay there more than one day. So I said to myself, I've got to save my sanity, whatever is left of it. And one day I left the law school and walked down, if anybody's familiar with Philadelphia, 34th and Chestnut is where the law school is, down to Broad and Market, which is where City Hall is. And I walked up, and I didn't know a soul down there, and went to the district attorney's office and went in, and I said, may I speak to the district attorney? Sort of like Sam Cherry when I was the mayor. Could I go in? But the only difference was I had a jacket and tie on. I didn't have Bermuda shorts and go-aheads like Sam did when he came up to see me. I'll never forgive you for that, Sam. So I went in there, and I said, Mr. Crumlish, I'd like a job. He says, what do you do? I said, I'm a law student at Penn Law School. He said, well, Ivy League students don't have jobs. They study. I said, I don't like studying. I don't like the whole experience. I really need a job. And he said, okay, you may have gotten lucky because Arlen Specter, who was in the DA's office at the time and ultimately became a U.S. Senator, like Catherine Cortez Masto, and her husband is here tonight. A very, very important guy. Not you, Arlen. Arlen had just won the first case as a deputy district attorney of a Teamster conviction taking place, and he was elevated to the appellate division of the DA's office. And I went in, and he said, look, I shouldn't hire you, but you seem desperate. I said, I am desperate. I said, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And he said, well, you'll work for me. I'll pay $1 an hour. I was happy to get it. I didn't feel completely dependent upon Carolyn earning our living. And you'll work a 40-hour a week. And I was, I think, one of the few guys who ever went to an Ivy League school to do that. And my grades showed that, by the way. It's not as though, I'm not telling you I got all A's doing that. A wealthy widow was killed in Las Vegas. Her name, in Philadelphia, her name was Lulabelle Rothman. And the fellas who killed her took $300,000 in new bills from under her mattress and brought it out to Las Vegas, and in the old traditional way of money laundering, money laundered it in Las Vegas. They were arrested in Las Vegas, and then Harry Claiborne, who was the premier criminal defense attorney in Las Vegas, represented them and got them released on a writ of habeas corpus. They went to Omaha, where they were arrested for the Philadelphia murder, brought back to Philadelphia for trial, and Arlen assigned me to work up the testimony for a motion to suppress, which was filed questioning and challenging the Las Vegas arrest and search and seizure. So, and Carolyn and I differ on this one. She says, I make things up. I don't make things up. She makes things up. Don't trust your mayor. She makes things up. Oh, boy, do I love hearing that. I don't make things up. You make things up. Okay, my nose is growing? Wrong. I'm with these two police officers. It's a cold, dreary, I won't give it a month, dreary, wintry month. And those familiar with the City Hall in Philadelphia will know that it's an old stone building and the winds were just going right through the building. And for 4 hours, we had some Chinese food. What else? Chinese food ordered up there. We ate it. And we went over the testimony, and at the end of the 4 hours, they said, "What are you doing here?" Well, Philadelphians then, maybe now, were the most parochial people in the world. I mean, just in order for us to think about going to Atlantic City, which was 60 miles away, we had to psych ourselves up for weeks. In order to go to New York, 90 miles away, it took months to get the courage up to take the ride. And I said, what are you saying? They said, well, where are you going to practice? I said, Philadelphia. Where else is there? And they said, Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a great place. This is back in 1964 when the conversation is taking place. Las Vegas is a great place, wonderful place for a young lawyer to come out and start a practice. And I said, you mean people live there? People actually have homes in Las Vegas? And he says, don't worry about it. The beautiful homes, and why don't you come out and see what you could do. Well, I didn't have much choices, to be honest with you, because my grades were so bad. I had to limit my potential selections as to where I was going to work. And I went home that night and I said, sweetheart, how would you like to move to the land of milk and honey? And Carolyn said to me, Oscar, I love you more than anything in the world, but I'm not going to Israel. I said, how about Las Vegas? She said, okay, and we came out on a B'nai B'rith junket, and we stayed at the Flamingo, and it's the first time that I ever had a martini that had a pickled Brussels sprout. So we moved out. We didn't know anybody who lived here, and we arrived here with $87 in our pocket, not being sent by the mob and the syndicate, not knowing a soul. And I got a job in the DA's office here by accident because I wrote a letter, an application for a job to the district attorney of Las Vegas. And as you know, there's no such thing. It's the district attorney of Clark County. But fortunately, it got into the hands of Ted Marshall, who was the district attorney, and he offered me a job. And I worked as a clerk in his office for a year, but I used it well because coming to a new community, we moved. Carolyn insisted that we moved to a nice place, because where we lived in Philadelphia, especially during the summertime, there was about a murder a night. The guns were going off every single night. A bad neighborhood near the University of Pennsylvania, and people are shooting each other. I had to pick her up at the bus stop when she was coming home from work, and it was just a whole different way of life. And she said, when you go out there, you have to live in a nice place because you'll meet nice people, and they'll become your clients. So we moved into a wonderful apartment. It's still there at 713 East Sahara, the Palms Apartments, and apartment 613. Not so nice today as it was then. And we had wonderful neighbors. The one I liked the best was the prostitute who walked her dog across the street, a little poodle, walked her across the street every day. And I said, boy, what nice neighbors we have. I will be able to build up a practice from this. There's no question about it. So Carolyn was right in that regard. And I took the bar and was fortunate enough to pass the first time. And in the meantime, I had been working for judges like John Mowbray. How many have lived here in the 60s? Wow, very few. Well, John Mowbray was a real good guy. He had me ghost opinions for him. He was very busy, and I knew how to write at the time, so I would write opinions for him, putting down what he wanted the result to be, and I enjoyed that. And I knew Sailor Ryan, who was in charge of the laborers union here, and these people all became my sponsors, so to speak, and sent me business as soon as I opened up my office, and that's how my practice started. It was a very challenging. And I was a baby, and there's not a person, and I say this without equivocation, in the United States history who had the law practice that I had. I had the best law practice in the United States. I represented defendants in the first wiretap case under the Omnibus Crime and Safe Streets Act of 1964. I had that case. I represented folks in Macon, Georgia, on the first RICO prosecution in the United States. And I was able to make a reputation for myself, which included representing the likes of Meyer Lansky, just going right down the list, 19 out of 26 gentlemen with Italian last names who were subjected to searches on December the 20th of 1970. They all became my clients, and they were all subject to wiretaps, which were illegal, and I was able to get them all thrown out, and I got a reputation as being the wiretap expert in the United States. And there was a fella who was working at the Golden Nugget, who was a bartender there, and he was used as the provider of the line information, which is the gambling spread, and he would call bookmakers around the country who were interested in getting the Las Vegas line because it was the line for the country. And he was picked up on a wiretap which was done at the Miami International Airport. There was a father and son team there, Marty and Jesse Sklaroff, who were using the phones. One of the great stories was I had the FBI agent on the stand, and he was talking about the surveillance, and he had placed himself in a box, like a carton, that had a hole in it, and he was filming the Sklaroffs on the phone at the airport, and they began to move this carton. They were going to put it on a plane or something, and he said, "Stop, FBI, FBI," and this poor skycap is still running. I mean, his eyes became like saucers, and he ran down the airport, and I was able to get involved in that case, and that was a terrific experience for me because I was with the best lawyers in the United States who were representing the Sklaroff family, and I was representing this bartender from Las Vegas. And I went down to Miami, and I said, "Judge, my client should be severed out of the case," which means separated from the others, because his role was so minimal that he's going to be prejudiced as a result of the magnitude of the evidence against the other defendants. And the judge said, "Denied." I heard denied more than any lawyer in the history of the world. Denied. Wherever I went, it was denied. Except one day, I'll tell you about another case where it wasn't denied because we bribed the judge. But, well, it wasn't really a bribe. We gave him a baseball. Well, it's a true story. And I went down there, and finally the judge said, "Mr. Goodman, I'm going to grant your motion. Your client can go back to Las Vegas. I'm going to sever him from the case." He said, "But the others will continue." So the other lawyer said, "Look, let this young kid," I wasn't 30 years old. I was like 28 years old in this major case. They said, "Let him stick around. He could help us." And I stayed down there. Unfortunately, their clients were convicted. I went back to Las Vegas, and everybody said Goodman won the first wiretap case in the United States. Had nothing at all to do with the wiretap. I mean, it was on a severance, and the guys are under the wiretap. They're the ones who had the problem, but I got the thanks for it and the reputation for it.
There is more to come from Oscar Goodman right here on the corner of Main Street. So when people come downtown, one of the top questions I get is about the history of Las Vegas, the history of downtown. How do they find out more about what really took place here back in the day, and all about where we came from? And I tell them there is no better guide than the Las Vegas Walking Tour. He knows everything about downtown Las Vegas from the history to the present day.
That's Kelly Fairchild. He's been doing this tour for 7 years. It's 2 hours. It starts at the Plaza and you end at East Fremont Street. And he will tell you every single thing you've ever wanted to know about the history of downtown Las Vegas and more.
So if you are interested, go to LasVegasWalkingTours.net and reserve a spot. And because you listen to On the Corner of Main Street, this podcast, you will get 50% off when you use the code PLAZAPOD.
50% off. That's awesome. And it's off any morning tour or afternoon tour. It's the best Vegas education you can get. And you'll learn all about the history of all these vintage Vegas casinos like the Plaza.
When you're done, you can come to Oscar's and cool off with a drink.
There you go. Space is limited, so make sure to book and go to LasVegasWalkingTours.net and use the code PLAZAPOD for half off a morning or afternoon tour. See Las Vegas like you've never seen it before.
Welcome back. I'm still here with Oscar Goodman. right here at the bar inside Oscar's Steakhouse.
It's a good thing I show up when you ask me
It's
to.
tough to promote and bring content. It is a good thing you do it, especially this early in the morning without a cocktail. I'm impressed.
No.
People will be bored because you're not drunk.
You made an assumption. You don't know where I came from.
That's true.
I got a question about those early days
Yes.
when you got here.
Sure.
First couple of years, you're trying to get established. Do you ever have any second thoughts about, or get homesick, or think about going back?
Oh, sure. It was a whole different way of life. Philadelphia was an old city with old customs, with a caste system as far as society was concerned. Las Vegas was, I learned very early when Carolyn and myself drove down past Boulder City and came into town on August the 28th of 1964. I looked out and I saw a couple twinkling lights in the desert, and what do you call those things that they have in cowboy movies? Like it's a tree, but
Tumbleweeds.
A tumbleweed. A tumbleweed rolls right in front of my car. I never saw a tumbleweed in my life.
Right.
And then come into town, and half the people are dressed in boots and cowboy hats, and the other half are ladies of the night. And I just wasn't used to this, but it was a great ride coming into town. It really was, because everybody was nice to me. Everybody helped me. Everybody wanted to befriend me, and of course I had a wife who was charming the pants off of everybody. So everything came to fruition just as we would have hoped.
And so what's interesting about it is that when I hear you talk about it, it makes me think about my own story and how I moved here in 2007 and not knowing anybody. The only difference, frankly, is I didn't have a wife, but you at the time.
You made up for it, though.
I did. I did. But the idea of coming here, not knowing anybody,
Even more
not being
so.
sure about, learning about the industry and the people, that the characters here, and I think the thing that sticks out is people are nice to you, and there's a ton of opportunity.
A great opportunity. I always said if you had half a brain, you could make a living here.
Yeah.
If you wanted to work hard, you got more than half a brain, so you're doing very, very well. But the truth is, your move had to be far more difficult than mine. You have family that's over in England and in South Africa, and you're a long distance from them. I remember one time you said your grandmother was ill, and you were going over there. It's not as though you were taking a flight back to Philadelphia to see an ill grandmother. You had to travel over half the world.
I did.
So and you made it. You still can't speak English properly, but
Thank you.
No, it's a different kind of English that you speak. I don't know what you would call it, Afrikaner. I'm not sure.
I think I'm very proficient in English.
Not really. You mix up your me's and your I's.
Okay. Anyway, but what's funny is we had somebody on our podcast just last week or 2 weeks, and he said something very interesting that is so true. It doesn't matter if you've been here 60 days or 60 years. This city welcomes you in, and people give you an opportunity.
No question.
And that doesn't always happen everywhere else.
It doesn't happen anyplace else. And the thing that's distinctive about Las Vegas, and I still don't have the answer, and I've lived here 60 years. I don't know whether it's the most real place in the world or the most unreal place in the world. I think that the people are probably more real here, but the atmosphere is really, you look out the window of Oscar's and down on Fremont Street, there's not another street in the world like that. Nothing even compares.
You said something in the dinner series that stuck with me as well. You said your parents taught you 2 things.
Yes, 2 things that were very important. What you want out of life. One, you want to make sure that your children are educated.
Yep.
And number 2, that you leave behind a good name.
Exactly.
You do those 2 things, then you've spent your time on earth well. And we've tried to live our lives that way. It's not easy sometimes because
You've done a pretty good job with those 2 things.
well, I hope so. I feel I have. I've done the best I can because I've got some very bad habits. I'm a man who likes the sauce, and I'm not talking about Chef Ben's sauce. I'm talking about the sauce behind the bar.
Yep.
And an occasional bet, like every 5 minutes.
Right.
Never on a winner and always on a dog.
Mm-hmm.
So you have those 2 things going for you. The one good thing is
You came second in the Kentucky Derby.
I do not have a wandering eye. Let's put it that way. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. So we heard a little bit about how Oscar moved here with Carolyn, but now we will hear the moments that gave him the opportunity to get into the position of mob attorney, alleged mob attorney, and how it came to be that his career progressed into the phenomenon that he became.
Carolyn was, and I've said this before, she was the first card counter that I knew before they had card counters. Her parents played a game called concentration with her when she was a little girl. And they would take the 52 cards and they put them upside down. And she had to match them up. And her mind developed that way. And she used to go to the hacienda. And we had a little steak dinner. My dad would send us $25 a month as our wedding present. And whatever we had left over, she would go to the 21 table. And she would play whatever was left over. And invariably, she would win, put the money in her purse. And I would stand behind her because I knew they weren't building these beautiful places because people were beating them. I mean, I didn't want to be considered a sucker, so I'm behind her. But in those old days, it was sort of nice because you could talk to the dealers, you could befriend them. You didn't have to worry about some pit boss or casino executive screaming at you, you're not allowed to talk and that kind of thing. And I made friends with one of the dealers that used to deal cards for Carolyn. And one day, he calls me up, and he says, do you do bankruptcies? Well, he didn't know. In my law office, where there was a fee, there was a remedy. I didn't know. I had no idea what a bankruptcy was. I never did one in my life, but I went to a form book, and I copied a form and charged him $250, including the costs, and he was happy, and I was happy. And this is the way it all starts. This is the way a guy becomes a mob lawyer. A phone call comes into the pit of the Hacienda Hotel. And nothing's changed over all the years. Nobody in Las Vegas says, I don't know. Everyone in Las Vegas knows everything. And they said, who's the best criminal lawyer in Las Vegas? And thank God, the guy who answered the phone cupped the phone. He says, who's the best criminal lawyer in Las Vegas? And the guy I did the bankruptcy for said, I don't know whether he does criminal work, but call Oscar. So I get a phone call from a guy, it scared me to death. We want you to come to our house. I said, for what? We're going to hire you on a case and you better win it. I hadn't even seen the casino movie hadn't been made. I didn't know what I'm dealing with here. So I'm very brave, and I said to Carolyn, would you please drive me to this place? Because Carolyn was very good with her high heels. I mean, she protected me whenever I would give somebody pardon the expression, the finger, because of their driving. She would get out of the car with her high heel and make sure they wouldn't hurt me. So I go up to the door. Are you Oscar? I said, yes. He says, here are 3 dimes. I had no idea what the guy was talking about. Now, all of you people, you know what 3 dimes are. I didn't. He hands me an envelope. I go, and he said, you better win the case. You'll get a call tomorrow. Well, I was shaking like a leaf. And I went outside and said to Carolyn, let's drive around the corner, and I want to see what's in here. So I opened it up, and there were 30 $100 bills. I had never seen so much money at one time in my entire life, and I knew at that time I better win the case. So I could tell you how I won the case, but maybe I save that for next time. No, I'm going to tell you right now whether you're eating or not. I really don't care whether you're eating. So the case involved the stepbrother of a reputed mobster from the Northeast who was involved apparently with gambling and with a little bit of pornography. You like the pornography part, I could tell. Oh boy, are these sick people here tonight. So I'm representing this young kid. The brother comes in, and I said, you know, this is a very tough case. He said, you're going to win it, aren't you? I said, do I have a choice? I have no choice. It was a Dyer Act. Mr. Masto, you know what well, he doesn't know what a Dyer Act is. He just worked for the Secret Service, so forget about it. A real government man would know what a Dyer Act is. A Dyer Act is taking
a vehicle which is stolen from one state across state lines to another state, and that's what the charge was. And the government used it as a sure thing, a lock. I mean, they never lost one. It's not hard to prove that a car is stolen in Arizona and the guy behind the wheel is in Las Vegas. I mean, it's almost a presumption, which it was, that he's guilty. And I tried the case, and it was on St. Valentine's Day. And I argued to the jury. Judge Foley was the judge, a good guy. And I said, "Can we leave, Judge, and go back to the office?" He says, "Be on call, because if the jury has a verdict, you have to come right back." I said, "We certainly will." And I walked from the old federal courthouse, which was the new mob museum, that building, over to my law office, which was at the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Bridger, over a flower shop. And the client's brother, the client didn't do much talking at all. Client's brother said, "What do you think? Is a quick verdict good or is it bad?" I said, "The more time this jury takes, be assured the better chance we have of winning." We walk the 2 blocks, go up the elevator, the phone's ringing, the jury has a verdict. I said, I told you that we had to be careful here. And I went back, and the jury, I think they felt so sorry for me, they came back with the not guilty verdict. And it was from that case that I got Meyer Lansky as my client. And of course, Meyer Lansky had been charged with a skim from the Flamingo, and he had been in Israel at the time, and I was hired. I wasn't 30 years old at the time, representing the head of the criminal crime syndicate, a financial genius, and the word spread throughout the United States that there's this kid in Las Vegas who can't lose a case. And the truth of the matter is, I am the luckiest fella who ever lived, got the most beautiful wife in the world, the 4 most beautiful children in the world, the best friends in the world, the greatest restaurant in the world, and I'm a happy fella. So I don't care whether you like what I said or not. I don't care whether you come back next time or not. There'll just be more food and more drink for me if you don't. So you're not going to hurt my feelings, believe me. But thank you very much tonight. Appreciate it.
I mean, that must have been terrifying with that call when he said, "You better win the case."
Oh, boy.
And then the money in the envelope.
I was afraid. I had no idea how to handle a situation like this. I had a little office, and people would come up, and they would hire me, and here's a guy saying he wants me to come to his home.
How old were you?
Maybe 24.
Wow, that's amazing. And you think they found, well, we're going to get into how they found you, but your reputation had started from the wiretap case?
No, my reputation really locally started from court appointments that I had. I represented a young fella, he and his brother. The brother was over 17, and the client that I was appointed to represent was 16 years old, and their case ended up as a result of a tragic confrontation in the desert where a marijuana transaction was engaged in, and a killing took place of one of the parties, and my client and his brother were both charged with murder, and in those days it was first-degree murder. There was no bifurcated hearing, which means a hearing on guilt and innocence, and then one on sentencing. If you're found guilty, then you get the death penalty, and I'm appointed to represent the younger of the 2 brothers. And I was very, very lucky because I was able to make the law in 2 different respects. And this is where my reputation began to grow in the legal community. Mm-hmm. I was able to show that a minor could not be tried for felony murder, and that the death penalty was unconstitutional. Right. And I prevailed on both of those things. And the word went through the legal community, which was a very closed community at the time, very small legal community, and a community that had no jealousies. They all came up to me and congratulated me on it. So at least in the courthouse, I began to have a reputation which was established. And my first major case was a retrial. I did not participate in the first trial, a court appointment of an African-American youngster. He probably was no older than 23, 24, charged with taking a shotgun and blowing the brains out of a fellow who was going to be testifying against him. It was just an amazing experience to have somebody's life in your hands.
Right.
And the only thing that stands between that person and the gas chamber or the electric chair was your talent and the decision of the jury, because the judge really didn't have any alternative. He had to do whatever the jury told him in those days. The jury apparently had reached a verdict. So we went down there, and my client comes out, and the jury came back, and they said guilty of first-degree murder. With that, they took my client, put the cuffs on him, moved him right into the cell in the back of the judge's office, and I said to Carolyn, I got to go back. I got to talk to him. So I went back, and the sobs were just coming. I mean, I relive it. I relive it whenever I talk about it, and everybody who was there could hear the sobbing. And Carolyn says, "Boy, he's really taking it hard. I mean, I never heard anybody sob that way." I said, "That wasn't him. That was me." And that's a true story, and I was able to turn that around and walked him out a free man a couple of years later, which is another story in and of itself.
That'll be another dinner series.
It will be, yes, it will, because we had a district attorney at the time who was a megalomaniac, and he was just power hungry, and he made a deal with me that if my client passed a polygraph, which is a lie detector test, he would let him have credit for time served, be an accessory after the fact, and let him out. And my client did all that, and I'll be talking about that in a later dinner series. We did it over at the Fremont Hotel. We rented a room. The polygrapher wanted to have a room that had nothing in it other than a chair and a table, nothing to detract the person who's being interviewed. And he concluded that my client did not participate in the murder. And I went with the report in my hand, and the district attorney said, well, he doesn't know what he's doing. And this is a man that everybody agreed upon would run the polygraph. And I'm not going to follow through on my deal. I said, you're a liar. And that's when I told people, that's when I learned how to be a lawyer, because it's not what you learn from the books. It's you learn with the baseball bat. And you learn how to use the baseball bat. And I said, okay, I understand they're having the National Association of District Attorneys Conference in town this week. And I'm going to get up, because you're an officer of that organization, I'm going to get up in front of all these DAs. I'm going to tell them you're an effing liar.
Ooh.
I made the deal.
So one of the things in that segment you said, and it's so true, is nobody in Las Vegas ever says no. Everyone knows everything, and everyone says that they're representing someone or something, and they're going to do something. I remember when I moved to town, if everyone had said they were doing it, we'd have 50 high-rise buildings in this town, we'd have 50 stadiums, and we'd have 7 trains running back and forth to Los Angeles. Of course, there's no trains running. Everybody was building a train, and still is building a train.
They still are.
And nobody's building a train at the same time.
Correct.
And we had one that was going to build a train for €8, and they kept saying it was arriving, and the train never showed up.
Right, it's going to stop down here, as a matter of fact.
Of course, we were going to be we negotiated a whole deal for
Amazing.
this train that was
I know the man very, very well. He used to come up to my office.
And this is the best thing about it. If you're a dreamer and you can say you're doing anything, the mayors or the people in charge, they'll meet with anybody. In other cities, you can't just go walk in and tell the mayor you're going to build a train.
No, that's very true.
Or a stadium or a high-rise. It's never actually going to happen, and you have nothing behind you. But here, you can just dream big and say you're doing it.
You can do that, and the papers here are they're susceptible to taking anything that has a little bit of sex to it and running it every single day until it blinds you. And that's what happened with this guy. I would read about him. The things I was reading about took place 5 months before in my office, and he's talking about he's going to have this train. It was a good idea, though. It was a gambling train, and it would have been fun,
right.
Even if it went from...
We're still waiting for it to arrive.
Forget about it, and no one knows where Barstow is. What we should do, Jonathan, we should do a blog, you and me.
Podcast.
Whatever this is called.
Yeah.
Because you're a very good straight man. I'm very serious. You're bright, and you speak funny. And between that and the stories that I could tell, I think a lot of people would listen to this.
Right. Just so you're aware, this is exactly what we're doing right now.
No one's listening.
That CEO thing, you don't need that. You can just sit here all day.
Here we are doing a podcast. It's a genius idea. How did you think of that?
I don't know. It just felt right.
So that was the dinner series. I hope you enjoyed that segment of Oscar's story. And the next one is coming up on June the 9th. It's pretty much sold out. I think we have a couple of tables left. So Plaza website is where you can find out more information. If you're interested, or just text me or Oscar. And
don't text me.
don't text Oscar. He won't
I will not
reply.
respond. I don't know how to reply. I'm still looking for that button.
But I think, Oscar, if you want to just tease a little bit about what you're going to be talking about the next one, and of course, if you miss these, or you're based in Canada, which you're still locked down, or you're based in London and you're still locked down and you can't get here, we now have this platform to share these stories with you. So what will you be talking about on June the 9th?
It's going to be the greatest. I'm going to be talking about all the people that I met who were portrayed in the movie Casino in real life, and how they came to be my clients, and the acolytes around them, and how they became my clients, and the challenges to various gaming laws, and putting the Constitution back on the books. It'll be great. A lot of murders, a lot of gruesomeness, and it always tastes good when you have those kind of stories coupled with a big steak and a
Paired
martini.
with a steak and a martinis. What could be better?
We'll be back again soon, but in the meantime, please rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends about On the Corner of Main Street, and of course, follow us on social. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @PlazaPod, and on Facebook, find us @Plaza Podcast. Or go right to the top and tweet Jonathan @JonathanJossel. We'll see you next time from right here on the corner of Main Street.